whatever surface that you have created, you need to work on it in 6 hours. And when you look at the Sistine Chapel and you look at the beautiful work, apart from the fact about how it was envisioned, but the fact of how it was created itself, that itself is very overwhelming. And to think that someone has spent years doing that, perfecting and created that work of wonder, I think that is beyond one's imagination. You start questioning your own abilities of whether you should be doing something, because absolutely there are no results. And I feel in this struggle and success, you miss out on the joy. I'm actually not very comfortable with the thought of art being a tool. You just stand in front of a canvas and you really don't know what to put on it. And then you say, okay, there are no forms, it becomes even more challenging. Because then what do you see on the canvas if there is no form?
This is so thought-provoking, because you are comparing something which is supposed to be creative with a basic fundamental action of just being functional.
I think it is an inner urge to kind of keep expressing yourself.
If you look at the spectrum, the literary work that has happened and what we are blessed to have in the history of humanity, to what language is being used right now, what you just explained, this journey seems to be very long, but maybe very fast.
The fact that the characters are waiting for Godot, whom they have never met, and who is not introduced to us as a person, but it is something that they are waiting for.
Hi Nivedita.
Hi Megha.
I'm so excited already.
Same here, even I'm very excited with this meeting.
We are in Mumbai. The year is 2024. Can I request you to close your eyes for me? Go back to your childhood, the year of your choice. Tell us the memory that comes to your mind when you first got intrigued by any art.
Okay, so I think right from my childhood, I was someone who would always doodle, keep drawing, sketching. So all my notebooks, the notebooks of my siblings, any blank paper I saw, I would keep sketching. And that was something that gave me a lot of joy. Thankfully, when I was growing up, we didn't have any other forms of entertainment. So you only had to kind of find something for yourself. So I used to keep sketching, and so for me at that time, I thought I would either become a big artist, or I thought I should become an air hostess because I thought that was a great profession to be in. Or I thought I should become a nuclear scientist because I was living in a defense colony. So I thought these are like 3 career options for me, and I ended up doing none of them. But yeah, what I think I have done is to keep that little bit of art within me alive. And over the years, I think I was very drawn to the European artists. And from the time I really started making even a little money, I would collect books on, the Impressionists or the, the masters. And for me, that art form somehow, it drew me to them. So that was my initial, memories. And the fact that my brother bought the first oil set for me, he bought me one canvas and a set of oil paints, and so I was the only one among my friends who had that kind of a set.
A badge
So
of
yeah,
honor.
so then everyone would come and say, oh wow, these are oil paintings. I had no clue of what to do with them, but I still painted, nonetheless. So yeah, I think, the desire to kind of try something out was always there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So your joy that you found with the doodles that you made,
Yeah.
the intrigue or the curiosity that you had about knowing different art forms,
Yeah.
and then you said the desire.
Desire, yeah.
How have you kept that alive? Because while you did not become a nuclear scientist or an air hostess or an artist, but I will disagree with you, you are an artist. Having a corporate job for such amazing career that you have had, you still paint, you still find the time to nurture the artist within you, so much so that your paintings go for exhibition. How have you nurtured that artist in you?
So I think it is not a conscious effort that we do. I would maybe speak for all artists. I think it is an inner urge to kind of keep expressing yourself in whatever way. So even if, let us say, I am in a boring meeting, so to say, you will find my office books full of, some kind of doodles, or some kind of, even when I am thinking through something. So it is something that is there as a constant. It is not that you make an effort to kind of go out there and create something. Art is something that you just keep doing, maybe as a way of giving yourself some kind of a relief. It is a way of escaping from also what is very real or sometimes very difficult. So that is a place of escape, and that is a nice place to be, good place to be.
Precisely to do that, to help people see the value of having art in their lives, to have the courage to nurture the artist within, is why we created this platform called Voice of
That's
Artist.
wonderful, wonderful.
Thank
Yes.
you for coming to Voice of Artist.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to Voice of Artist. Nivedita, how are you feeling?
So I feel great and very overwhelmed, I would say, with this whole thing, because you put in so much of effort, and you are actually living the dream that you have wanted. So I'm very overwhelmed and very happy for for you and for this initiative.
That means a lot coming from you, because we've had so many conversations
Yeah.
about this in the past, I think 9-10 years that
Yeah.
we've known each other. And you are one of the people who have given me the courage to nurture the artist within me, because we see a lot of people saying, अरे retire हो जाएंगे उसके बाद जो करना है करेंगे, but not making your realities of life an excuse to delay yourself from happening, bringing out who you are, who truly lies within you. That is the courage that I've got from you. And is there any way to balance this career side and your personal passion side?
Okay, to put this in a perspective, this is courage you had within yourself, right? And I think I was only directing you to your own strengths. This is my very strong belief that no one can give courage to anybody. Each one of us has it. It is just about finding it within ourselves. So yes, you found that, and you found your calling, and I'm very happy to see that. Now, see, for me, when you ask a question like how do you make time, or how do you, these are not, your life, your work and art are not three different things. I feel they are all part of you. So I think if you really love doing something, you'll find ways and means and time for it. So it is as simple as, if you have about, half an hour in a day, would you want to look at a reel, or would you want to kind of do something which gives you more meaning?
So the choice is yours.
The choice is yours, and we are making choices all the time. And if you are making a choice not to do something or to do something, well, we live with those consequences.
Where does influence come in this? Influence of the ecosystem or your environment around you?
I think we are living in, I would say, on one hand, it's a very exhilarating kind of time, because there are so many new things. But at the same time, I feel we are also living in very, very difficult times. Because the first thing being that our attention is being taken away by so many different factors, right? And many times it is not even within our control. We are so drawn to things, and maybe you will realize at the end of 3 hours that, oh, I have done nothing for 3 hours and they're just gone. Or a Saturday just goes and you wouldn't know what you have done. So these are really very difficult times. But to find your space, or to center yourself and understand that yes, there is time you need to take out for yourself and do something, I think that, having that consciousness is very important.
And can art play a role in that, to center yourself, to use art as a tool for reflection, for knowing yourself better?
So, I'm actually not very comfortable with the thought of art being a tool, because I think we have, there are so many tools out there, or kits out there. So I don't want to box it into a kit or a toolkit kind of a thing. I feel it is about making time and being conscious about the time you're using, and using art to kind of say that yes, I can also create something, because we have all become just consumers, right? We are consuming something all the time. We have become massive consumers of any content anyone is putting out there. So to the fact that each one of us is also a creator, and each one can also create something of value, if not for the world, for yourself, I think, making that shift would be important.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, shifting from a consumer mindset to a creator
Create a
mindset.
mindset, yeah.
And that creator mindset need not be the art forms that you are aware of, it could be
It
anything.
could be anything. It could be music. It could be, something that you want to, build. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be, an art form which say, you say that yes, I have made this beautiful oil painting, and I'll sell this for some. It is not something like that. It could be simple things that you create. It could even be, some lace that you want to kind of make. So it is not just about some big thing, because always those big things you'll say are unattainable, and then you don't want to even try.
So, just start.
Yeah, just start wherever you are, just start with whatever you have, whatever is handy.
To start this journey or to move forward to the next step, what is the role of self awareness or reflection in this process?
So self awareness, actually, that is something that I feel a lot of us are not comfortable with, because it
Scary.
brings up, yeah, it's scary, and at the same time, I don't think I want to face up to what the self awareness brings. So let us say, I have a long weekend and I want to do something. Now, if I just spend my weekend doing, filling it with all kinds of things, watching stuff or shopping or whatever, at the end of the weekend, I might say, okay, the weekend is done. But if I were to bring my self awareness and say, what have I really done with the 3 days? What did I want to do? I think it's very painful, right? So, self awareness is something uh, that is scary, that is difficult, and that is something that we need to definitely have, all of us. But we need to have the courage to be self aware, I would feel.
How?
Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, I think it is also about breaking time into, smaller pieces of time to look at what you're doing. So instead of, let us say, maybe setting a goal for uh, a long duration, breaking it up into smaller pieces, so that you say, okay, let me kind of just focus for this 1 hour or this 45 minutes, and then kind of moving on from there. So I don't know how it works for everybody, but I find more and more that I get drawn into, definitely a lot of online, keep browsing stuff. So trying to break that into smaller chunks and say, okay, now I'm going to read something for some time, or I'm going to write something for some time, right? So, and then bring the awareness back to yourself.
It's so important what you said, to find the courage to know yourself, your strengths, and keep talking to yourself. That self talk of bringing yourself to present. And you are the right person for me to ask this, Nivedita, because you are also MBTI certified, Korn Ferry, so many psychometric and leadership assessments tool. At the same time, you have done OD and change management from ISABS. When we look inwards and the self image that we might have about ourselves, when we start out on something, and it could be anything, not just art, you associate yourself with a struggle, and then you associate yourself with the success of it. In these two extremes, sometimes we tend to forget the main intent. If I talk about an artistic pursuit, initially I will have a struggler mindset, then I will have a successful mindset. Where does the artistic mindset lie, or how does it get lost, and how do you retain the intent in this journey?
So let me share, something that I have gone through a couple of times. This is about, very different from the journey that I've had in terms of the ODCP or, the MBTI, or, very different. I went to a couple of art festivals, right, to sell my art. So that's a very humbling experience. So you make the art, you put it out there, and you're standing in front of it. There are about 4 to 5,000 other artists, and everyone is there very hopeful. And then you're standing there wondering if people will come appreciate what you have to offer. And you have a lot of self doubt. So when you're talking about the struggle and the success, many times for us success is defined as, okay, have I been able to uh, make enough money out of it, have I got to the next level of my career, or out of what I did, have I been able to sell so many paintings, because at the end of the exhibition that is what you keep looking at, right? You see that, okay, this person's wall is empty, people have bought, and then you're looking at your art, does, will anyone buy it or not? There is a lot of self doubt, and there is also you start questioning your own abilities, of whether you should be doing something, because absolutely there are no results. And I feel in this struggle and success, you miss out on the joy. And you forget that you're doing something because you enjoy doing it. And because you're going from struggle to success and you forget the joy, obviously the road becomes even more difficult. So it is also, I think, about finding joy in what you're doing. And I think many times we don't do that. And because we don't find joy in what we are doing, it becomes very mundane, it becomes painful, you drag your feet. And then whether you're creating art or you're doing some work, or even something like you're dusting your house, I would say something as very fundamental as that becomes like a task to be finished.
And a burden.
So what is the difference between making art because you want to put it out there and sell, and dusting your house because you bring it down to the same level.
This is so thought provoking because you are comparing something which is supposed to be creative with a basic fundamental action of just being functional, because you have forgotten why you were doing that.
Correct. Yeah.
And when you put it like that, it seems commonsensical. Art and creation and creativity should be ideally full of joy.
Right.
But it ends up giving you more stress.
Stress. Yeah.
Just because you've forgotten why did you start doing it.
Yeah. You forget why you're doing it, and you're also so self-critical, because I also realize that I make a lot of paintings and I work on them the whole day, the whole night, and then somewhere early in the morning at around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, I look at the canvas, I say, oh, this does not look good, and then I just put white paint over it, and the family is shocked because they say it looked good, what happened? But there is something which is either not giving you joy or you're being very self-critical.
How do you know which is which?
So I feel the fact that you're very self-critical is the fact that you don't find joy in that. These are two very, these are linked very closely.
Does being self-critical also make you perfectionist?
It could, but it is also something that feeds on your self-doubt. Right? So you are all the time feeding your doubt, you're not feeding your joy. You're not saying, okay, let me make a mistake, it is fine. But you keep looking at it, and then you're trying to do something, and then you get frustrated and you just put some gesso and make it all white so that you don't have to look at it again. So yeah, that is at the same time so destructive to your own abilities. It brings down your own sense of joy. And I feel we don't pursue joy at all. We pursue success, and that is what takes away all the joy. And then how do you enjoy what you're doing, whatever you're doing?
Right.
How do you enjoy it?
Right. Paradox of choice.
Yeah.
Is there any way to come out of this cycle of self-critical mindset?
I think the first step would be to become aware that you are very self-critical, and that comes out of observing, going back to what you said about, awareness, it's also about observing yourself and what you're doing. Now when I see the number of canvases that, I hide in all kinds of crevices, literally, and they're all white, and there was one canvas which I had painted over, and my daughter kept saying, why do you have that, in focus, because whenever I do a video call, that is you can see the painting below, you can see the white gesso, and that incomplete, or that is just hanging there. So I am trying to kind of find the courage to say, no, I'm going to start something else on this. But yeah, it is about having courage to kind of find joy in what you're doing. Many times I think we restrict ourselves from feeling that.
What does it mean for you to paint?
So many things, so when I was a child, it was a way of expressing myself, and it was a way of trying new things. I would keep trying new things. There was also a brief moment where I felt, okay, let me check about going and selling my art. Then it became very stressful, and I felt, because then you are in a market, and what you are producing is like a commodity which has to, you look at 5,000 other paintings, and then yours becomes one of them, and it has to kind of, be liked by somebody. So I think if you bring that down, so I'm trying to bring that aspect down of being judged. I want to kind of just paint for, because I like doing it. So I'm trying to find that space now. That's very difficult. And once I've decided that it is only going to be for myself, I'm just going to do what I feel like, I think that is more difficult than kind of just doing it because you want to make a show out of it.
This right there is a sign of humility that you have, because I've seen your paintings and they are so amazing. The fact that you're still so nervous or conscious about will it be liked or will it be sold, like you said, it all started by the intention of selling it. But like you're saying, if you're doing it for the joy of it, it already is so good. If it is meant to find a new wall, it will.
So I would actually, say not just selling it, but the fact that it should be liked by somebody else
And appreciated.
or appreciated. The fact that you want something you've created to be appreciated by somebody else, and that you fix some kind of a worth to that rather than to your own joy of creation. I think that is where you lose the entire, the creative freedom or the ability to do something new and different.
So there are two perspectives, and tell us which one do you resonate with. One, what you said, you create for the joy of it, and the second is art. Any art form is nothing unless it's appreciated by someone else. And this also shows one where you are artist by passion and one when you are artist by profession as well. So what do you resonate with? Is art incomplete without an audience or without appreciation?
I feel personally, when I'm not, I'm not a professional artist, or I've not done art all my life. So I would not want to kind of sit on judgment on both of the things. But I feel creating art for the joy of it, for exploring what it means for you, would add more meaning. Appreciation would come anyway if it does. But having that as a primary thing is to drive your art, I think that makes it, it doesn't give you joy anymore.
So when we were conceptualizing Voice of Artist, the philosophy behind it was art above chart. If you do art for art's sake, knowing that it has some value, it can either bring joy to yourself or to the people around you or to society at large, without focusing on the charts, be it money,
Yeah.
be it fame, be it success, the charts will become a byproduct
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
And there is a way for it to be scaled, be sustained.
Right.
Because if we keep chasing chart,
Yeah.
where is the focus on art?
Art. Yeah, absolutely. I think I resonate with that completely. And I think if you find that joy, and if you are able to kind of spread that sense of joy, and if you help people find that joy, through what you're doing, I think that will be of great service actually, to help people kind of step back and say, okay, how do I find joy in what I'm doing?
I am going back to your behavioral specialist role. Where does our behavioral science and our mechanisms come into play when you look at joy, like the feeling or the emotion of it? Because joy is an emotion, and any art form ultimately evokes some emotion. So, how do different people process behavioral emotion?
So I think that's like a very very wide canvas, and I think the way we experience joy, or the way we experience, why we are self-critical, or why we experience, is of course dependent on a lot of factors, especially our childhood experiences, our coping mechanisms, how we find joy in what we do, why we become self critical, or why we become, we doubt ourselves. I think a lot of it has to do with the way we have experienced the world and the feedback we have got from the world at different stages, right? So if there is if today I feel very self critical, it is very important also for me to look at what experiences have shaped that, and to be able to kind of uh, maybe reimagine, or see how I can go beyond that, with that awareness or with that understanding. Many times it would also become important maybe for people to have somebody help them to realize those, because maybe it's not easy for for all of us to reflect on that. So it is also about how we are as a package, what we have, what meaning we have made of the world, right? So if I was very joyful, I expressed myself, and every time I have done that, I've got a whack on my back, and so I then feel that this is not the right way to do it, and then I kind of channel my energy in some other way till I so we need to understand that process as well.
That conditioning has to be
Yeah,
broken in
what
some way.
kind of conditioning?
Being self critical, I think, is just something which has become so ingrained in everyone. But from here, I want to leave an individual and zoom out a bit. Because you have dwelled into painting, you have MPhil in English literature, so you have a background in literature, and you are a communication expert in your professional side, which also, by the way, is creative in a way because communication is a form of expression. Would you say that art is a mirror to the society or human minds in general across art forms?
Art is always a mirror to society, and what we see out there is a mirror to what is happening, in society. Many times we might judge the art very harshly without actually looking at ourselves and the society that we live in. Right? So whatever art is being made at a particular time, whether it is in a movie or a book or whatever, is a reflection of what the society is going through at that time.
Any example that comes to your mind to explain this better to our audience?
So when we look at movies, for example, or I'm not an expert, or I have not watched as many, but when you look at movies and the way they have evolved over time, in terms of the movies which were more socially relevant would pick up topics which would bring out the difficulties of society, the older films, to what we are seeing now, which might bring out you know things which are disturbing, whether we are talking about a film like an Animal, for example, which got a lot of criticism as well, but at the same time also had a lot of supporters. So in a way, each one of those, I think, is an expression of what is happening and what that particular artist wants to put out there, right? And while we might judge it, say that it doesn't suit our sensibilities, but I think it is also something which is there in the psyche of that particular society, and that is what gets reflected, I feel, in the art that is getting created.
So it could be our denial that we don't want to accept the
Yeah,
reality,
yeah.
which is
So
why we are judging the reflection.
we are judging, or we don't want to see it, or we feel that this is something which is which is not representing what we are as a society, because we want to see ourselves as something very different. Right, even as a human being I might want to see myself as being very benevolent, very good, very nice, but I don't want to again look at who actually I am, right? So that is what I feel we are also as a society, the way we want to see ourselves and the way we are. I think that gap is something that we don't want to look at, and art I think falls somewhere in that gap. It is trying to fill that. It brings out, I feel, that psyche, and that is something we are not really ready to accept, and it makes us uncomfortable.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Movies are a very direct reflection because there is a narrative, there is a story, there is a character arc. Tell us about how it has reflected in paintings. Um, and from this, how has it reflected the society? But also about the artist, because if you look at Van Gogh's painting, they are so nice and beautiful. It might not reflect what state of mind he might have been while making that. And this assumption of people that your art represents your mindset as an artist. What is your take on that? Sorry, I asked two questions here. You can choose
Yeah.
whichever you want to answer.
So see, I think going back to again, whether it is movies or what you're writing, or the art that you create in terms of paintings. While you and I might think that Van Gogh's paintings are very beautiful, somebody might look at them as something which is which is very distorted view of the world. Right? It is also about how we look at a painting.
Our perspective.
Right? The perspective that we have is now also informed by the kind of, let us say, the what has been written about it. So when we go to kind of look at it, like a lot of people uh, go to the Louvre to look at the Mona Lisa, right? They don't want to look at anything else, and they buy the ticket, they go to the Louvre and they go through the entire crowd, and they go and say, oh, but this is such a small painting and this is just a woman, and did I pay so much of money to come and look at this? But then if you were to kind of actually understand how it was painted, or what happened, or how that entire technique was evolved, or what went into making that painting, I think then you would look at it very differently.
Right.
So when an art, something is put out there, and there is a lot written about it, you have you are already wearing those spectacles when you go and look at it.
Distorted perception.
So the minute you go there, you're carrying all those, the criticism or whatever is there in your mind to look at the painting. You're not looking at it fresh. You're carrying it
Mona
all.
Lisa to you? I'm curious. Or any other painting that you want to describe. How do you see a painting, or any painting that has really made you look at it for a long time? Any artists?
So I have actually, like I said, I have been collecting a lot of art, and for a long time I was drawn by the European artists, and I was drawn by the Impressionists, and Monet especially. I was very drawn to his work, and the fact of that he broke away from the classical way of painting to create a new way of looking at the world and representing it. I think to be able to interpret the world in your own way is what makes the painting very powerful, and that is what I think also makes Van Gogh's painting so powerful, because it is an interpretation of what he has seen and experienced. It is not that is his expression of himself and what he has seen.
So, as an artist, or specifically as a painter, we are talking about right now, would you say that one person's perspective, which is manifested in their painting, can also become a tool for philosophical inquiry into human insights? Would one person's perspective shape a narrative which goes beyond them and their painting?
See, when you put something out there, it can be interpreted in many ways, and it can shape many perspectives. Right? Art, that is what they say is the purpose of art, to kind of create a different meaning. And what you make out of it, how you interpret it, like let us say somebody sees a painting of Picasso, or might say what is this, or for example I can't take such names just like that. I was showing one of Gaitonde's paintings to someone. Yeah, or even Rothko's. So when we see, let us say, Rothko's paintings, you may say these are just blocks of
Colors.
colors.
Yeah.
But there are people who go and stand in front of it and they cry because it does something to them.
It evokes some
Yeah,
emotion.
it evokes some emotion. And then there was a lot of research into how he has achieved that effect in his painting. But somebody else might say these are just blocks of colors.
But tell us about you were painting an abstract which had a brown layer, and you were explaining to me about why you decided to put the brown layer and arrange the hues in the colors.
So I was only trying to experiment because I was trying to see what colors mean and how colors react to each other and what it means for to look at no form but only color, right? Because I felt in some way that form uh, gives us it takes away from the meaning of color. So I wanted to kind of just experiment with color and kind of just keep seeing how each color goes with the other and what kind of an effect it creates. So I wanted to kind of go beyond form, and which is what happens, let us say, when you sit in front of a Rothko. There is no form, but you have to connect to what is there in front of you.
Does it also help you understand your psyche at that time? Because while there is no form, which means you're filling it with whatever is in your head, is that how overwhelming emotion takes over you?
So I was just experimenting with a small piece because I have always wanted to kind of really experiment with colors. But the fact that you are looking beyond form itself is a very overwhelming thing. So if you look at a white canvas, it's a very intimidating thing,
Right.
right? So if you just stand in front of a canvas and you really don't know what to put on it, right? And then you say, okay, there are no forms, it becomes even more challenging, because then what do you see on the canvas if there is no form? No, it's easy to say, okay, I'll paint one, this person, this butterfly or this bird, which is what I have done a lot of butterfly or lotus kind of paintings, which are also, uh, very inspired by Senaka from Sri Lanka, artists from Sri Lanka. So yeah, so when you move beyond that form is when it becomes very difficult.
Has your artistic side evolved with time?
I would say it is still very experimental and still very, very influenced by what I see around me, right? It is influenced by the artists that I get drawn to, and I try to kind of find ways of expressing the same but in different ways. So yeah, I think the struggle is also to, for every artist, is to find his or her own voice,
What
right?
your
Which
voice?
is what you're talking about, which is very difficult.
So influence and then imagination. Is that what the process would be? You get influenced by other experts in the field and then you go into your imagination?
So I don't know how it works actually, because there is so much out there that you keep getting drawn to doing different kinds of things. But I feel maybe you need to kind of keep doing stuff, whatever it is, to be able to find your own voice till you say, okay, this is something that I really love doing and it gives you joy.
What is your voice of artist?
I'm still trying to find that. I have not found it. I don't know if this one lifetime is enough, but yeah, I have not found that, and I think that is why I don't also finish a lot of my work, because I find that it's very easy to kind of look at something and create something which is very similar, but to create something which comes naturally to you is very difficult.
How art reflects society. Uh, Again, I think you're the right person for me to ask this because you know multiple art forms. I'm curious to know, is there any commonality across art forms, whether in terms of technique, whether in terms of the way artists approach that form, but is there any commonality, any pattern across different art forms?
What do you mean by commonality? And
It could be the mindset that you need. Uh, it could be a technique that you use. It could be the way you approach an art form, whether you're writing or painting or reading, anything. what connects different art forms?
So maybe what I see, when I step back, is a sense of discipline that we were talking about some time back. I think that is at the basis of all art forms, right? If you see a performance, I went to the Arangetram of a Bharatanatyam dancer recently. Beautiful performance. The number of hours that she put into the entire thing um, is something that we really will not, there is no measure to that. But then the performance looks very flawless, very effortless.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at different art forms, it is about the discipline in exploring it, understanding the techniques, perfecting them. It is not something that happens overnight, right? That is also something we were discussing some time back, that we want like instant results. I do something and put it out there and then everyone says wow. Doesn't happen like that. So there is effort, and I think the commonality also is uh, the sense of your own devotion to that art, right? So that is what I think is the commonality.
Discipline and sense of devotion will help you be creative and be better at
Yeah.
being an artist.
Though creativity and discipline don't go, or people don't
Don't
think
perceive,
that
yeah.
that they go together, but I feel it requires much more discipline to be an artist than to be somebody who goes to work in a corporate, because you need to kind of make an effort every day to kind of keep working on your
No, when you
art.
put it that way, yes, because if you're in a corporate job, you have external forces,
Yeah.
you have meetings scheduled, you have
Right.
other stakeholders. Here, you are your own boss and you are the doer
Yeah.
as well. So, how do you find that discipline when you are alone?
Yeah, or how do you find the discipline to keep practicing something? I was listening to some, a singer, and he was talking about his father, and he said that the father also was a classical Hindustani singer, and he said that the father would come out of his riyaz at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. He would be full of sweat, he would be drowned in sweat because he's been in that riyaz. Now when someone like that goes out there and sings, the sense, the audience also experiences it.
Right,
Yeah, because they have put their heart and their life into what they are doing.
right,
Now that is discipline, right? That is something that you would do every single day, and
right,
you're finding joy in doing that.
right. I will segue from this into a conversation that we had long back. And while one is the joy that you find and the joy that you spread through doing your art, but I also realized through you, Nivedita, that art can also help you understand the world around you a little better. And when I say art, it could be literature, it could be painting, it could be just an artistic mindset or knowing the history of the recorded art. Waiting for Godot.
Right.
You helped me see what's happening in the world today through a piece of literature.
Right.
Talk to us about that.
So, Waiting for Godot is something that we read as part of our the literature program, and that is something that stayed. And I think that is what happens with good literature and good art. It just stays with you, and I feel like all good literature, it gives meaning to your experiences, and it also gives meaning to understanding of what is happening around you, and it is applicable across times. When you're talking about, for example, many people talk about 1984 by George Orwell, and how it is applicable and how it is being lived. Or I would say even The Simpsons, for example, many people find it very uncanny that there is something which The Simpsons have captured which is happening now, and they say how, right? So I feel sometimes that the creativity is really very supreme, because it transcends time, it transcends space, and it is something that can look into the future.
How
with her.
powerful is that?
So I think, but then the fact is also that we don't allow ourselves to be creative, right? Because we are straight jacketed and we think that this is what success means.
Even though your gesture here, we are bucketing ourselves
Yeah,
and
all the
restricting
time
ourselves.
restricting ourselves. But then if one is truly creative, it transcends time.
So, what makes art or literature, let's talk about literature, timeless and universal? How do we look at, how do we explain this?
So again, going back to, because I have my grounding in English literature, so when we were studying, let us say we studied Shakespeare, or we studied, uh, writers like Beckett. A lot of things, when you look at the tragedies of Shakespeare, for example, and you see that they are remade even today and they are relevant. How is that? When you see an Othello being remade, or when you see a Macbeth being remade, I forget the name of that film with Shahid Kapoor. What was that?
Heather.
Hyder. So it has transcended time, right? If you are making a movie based on a theme from Shakespeare, who had written somewhere in the 16th, 17th centuries to now, but then the human nature and how we experience still, is relevant even today. So how do you explain some of those things?
This makes me think, do we appreciate art posthumous more or after, or does art happen before time?
So many times art might happen before time, like it happened for Van Gogh, where I think he sold one painting in all his lifetime, and then very diligently, I think his brother's widow was the one who, somehow put it all together, put the collection together, and she was the one who, preserved it and, made it available to the world. There are artists also like Picasso who have found fame in their own lifetime, and they have been revered. Monet found fame in his lifetime.
That's
So
very encouraging for people to keep pursuing their art.
yeah, so, and then I think maybe when art is much before its time, it doesn't find the kind of appreciation. Yeah.
I will now switch gears here, but still stay in literature. In addition to English literature, you also keep reading literature from across the world. Singer is something that we have talked about. And again, how you have used literature or literary work to explain what's happening in the world today. But do you see again a commonality in expression across the globe? Does art connect the world in unseen ways?
I think it does. So if we are, let us say, we are reading something by Singer, and we find, or like going back to the example of Haider, and saying that, if these are themes which are relevant even now, and which are, across continents and across generations and across centuries, they remain relevant. I'm sure art is something that connects the whole world. It is about helping to, make or find that connection.
What would you say is the power of language? Because thanks to different art forms and thanks to different ways of expression, you can express beyond verbal language. But what is the power of language according to you?
So I think in the present environment, I don't know if the power of language is something that has become a way of bringing out the anger in people, or it is a way of um, the way we understand language, or what is being expressed through language, has changed over time. So let me put it that way. So the way, the way emotions were expressed through language at a particular time, and the way we see them doing now, it's very different. And maybe it has become more raw, it has become less refined, it is more something that appeals to our baser sensibilities. So yeah, the way language is being used, the vehicle that it has become to express ourselves, and what and how the kind of impact we create through the language we use, I think that has changed definitely. And looking at the different ways we communicate these days, and looking at the platforms we have for communication, I think language has become weaponized, right? So it is like a weapon that we use against people or thoughts that are contrary, and something that we would want to completely negate and say that what I am thinking or what I believe in is the right and everything else is wrong. And language has become a weapon in putting the other thought processes down completely.
What is the ideal?
The ideal would be to use language to maybe debate, to create a space for a healthy interaction or to take place, rather than a weapon which is just used to kind of bring somebody down. Right? So I think it is not a, so the platform gives you the space to debate, the platform also gives you the space to kind of shoot somebody down, and that is what we seem to be doing much more easily.
Why?
So I don't think there are any easy answers to why, but I think it helps to bring out, again connecting back to, brings out, it gives you a sense of instant gratification, right? To say that, yeah, there's somebody who doesn't believe in what I believe, doesn't think the way I do, so I shoot that person down. I feel, I'm doing the right thing. It gives you a sense of gratification. It also gives you a sense of grandness and sense of being right all the time.
Could it also be a tool to hide your fear or insecurity or inferiority?
I think many times, yes. I think we use language also as a form to again hide our own, the inconsistencies or failures, and use it as a weapon mainly to attack the others.
If you look at the spectrum, the literary work that has happened and what we are blessed to have in the history of humanity, to what language is being used right now, what you just explained, this journey seems to be very long, but maybe very fast. How do we cultivate a mindset of going back to what language was supposed to be? Or
I feel we are indeed very lucky that the technology allows us to express ourselves, to connect, and it is about how we use or how we leverage the technology to be able to create a more positive dialogue. I think that would actually enhance the experience as well. I think instead of using language merely as a weapon to attack.
right.
Yeah.
I relate with this so much also because to me these are two parallel things. While technology is an enabler of creating a positive dialogue, I also feel art also plays a role in changing or shifting the way you process things or the way you see the world. And going back to what we started with about how you help me see the world or explain what's happening around me through a piece of literature which was Waiting for Godot. So help us understand, how did Waiting for Godot explain what was happening in a corporate setup or in the world around us in today's time?
I think in many ways, Waiting for Godot is a very seminal work that is relevant again at all times. And the fact that the characters are waiting for Godot, whom they have never met, and who is not introduced to us as a, as a person, but it is something that they are waiting for, and uh, what we experience is their, in a way, their helplessness that helps us to understand at many levels how existence can be meaningless, but also waiting for something which we do not uh, really realize or understand. I think in that way it gives a context to many of the things that we keep hankering after. It is like Waiting for Godot, right? Without even understanding what that destination is or understanding what is it that we are waiting for or what we are going to get at the end of it. So it becomes, in some way it encompasses that sense of meaningless, but also it gives a greater meaning to our experiences. We live our life through those characters and how they are exploring, the various emotions that they go through the conflict that they are processing as part of that entire, the weight that they have. I think that in some way encapsulates also, the present, uh, the milieu that we are in. That we are constantly reaching out for something. Maybe we really do not know what we are reaching out for.
Interesting. So, understanding the world around you and yourself through someone else's expression, which has taken an art form, which makes me think art can have multiple roles that it plays in an individual's life at different stages of life as well, apart from just becoming an expression or bringing the joy in the process. How else do you see art playing a role in people's lives?
I think it is about how we experience art, also the meaning it creates for us, and the ability for us as a society to see the reflection. So, going back to how we discussed about, some art being timeless and how it stays relevant, I think it is an interpretation of society of that time, but also futuristic at the same time, right? So, in that way, I feel, we keep evolving through our art, and the society also is evolving through art.
Um, it is also relevant, this conversation is also relevant for people who are not full-time artists, people like us who have a professional career which is not pure art. But I'm curious now, I'm reflecting back on my journey also and yours. Does our artistic side change the way our professional side evolves and grows? Do we bring our artistic or creative side in whatever role we are playing in our careers?
I think people who are more conscious and want to create art, I think it shows in everything that they do, and it could be, I for example, I know that our dear President Abdul Kalam was a player of the veena, right? And I'm sure, and there are a lot of scientists who are beautiful musicians as well. So I think art is something that enriches us in a way that we express ourselves, in a much better manner.
And the rational or analytical side of your brain and your creative side kind of
Coexist, yeah.
and they uplift each other.
Yeah.
It's not in
Yeah, they are not divergent, but that is something that is convergent. It is not either or, but it is and.
and
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
This conversation will be incomplete if I don't talk to you about learning and how a learning mindset is not just the need of hour, but there is no two ways about it that you need a learning mindset. Um, After having spent so many years experimenting, creating your own paintings, you still pursue painting as something that you need to get better at. And recently you went to Florence and learned something there. Talk to us about that and how have you continued to cultivate that learning mindset in yourself?
So I think one of the key things that keeps us actually alive is the fact that that we keep learning, and the fact is that it's about exploring something that we don't know. And so when I went to Florence this year, I had this deep desire to understand and learn how the fresco paintings were done, right? So I grew up with this great fascination towards the fresco art, and especially, I was in awe and speechless when I went to the Vatican and I saw the Sistine Chapel, and I just wanted to understand how it was done. And it was a very, what should I say, uh, fulfilling and at the same time a very revealing experience, because all it takes is about 6 hours. You have just 6 hours to create your work of art, and it has a process where you need to kind of think through and create, because you don't have too much of time. Whatever surface that you have created, you need to work on it in 6 hours. And when you look at the Sistine Chapel and you look at the beautiful work, apart from the fact about how it was envisioned, but the fact of how it was created itself, that itself is very overwhelming. Yeah. And to think that someone has spent years doing that, perfecting and created that work of wonder, I think that is beyond one's imagination.
How did you feel after you
Oh,
cleared?
it was amazing. I think my instructor was very patient. He explained the entire process, made me go through it in a very patient manner. But uh, just learning that entire process was very fulfilling. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining this so beautifully and giving us the visuals. But something you said, I want to bring attention to that. You said, I just wanted to understand. In the entire complex process of going through identifying what you want to learn, but this reason was strong enough for you. I just wanted to understand. There is no other reason. A lot of people spend so much of time trying to find that why. Why should I do this? What will it give me? How do you simplify the reason to do something? What would you say to people for that?
Well, I don't think, I can. It is about each one of us finding that why for ourselves. And the why of, doing something, exploring something, and keeping that, in some ways, that little child in you alive. I think that's very important because I think all children are very inquisitive. They want to know about the world, they want to do something, they want to express themselves, but somewhere we kind of try to push the child within somewhere deep, so that we get on with the world and do all the adult things that are expected of us. And very soon we realize that the child is gone and buried somewhere deep. But to get back, that sense of excitement or the sense of exploration, in fact, is, I think, very important, because I think that is what gives us life.
Right.
Yeah.
In such complex times that we are living in, where there is overwhelming amount of information available, overwhelming amount of stimuli available around us, how do you retain that inner child?
I think it is again, about connecting back to yourself, uh, finding what gives you excitement, what excites you, uh, and taking that time out to experiment, experience. I think those are very, very important. And taking those small steps, it doesn't have to be something very big, or it doesn't have to be something very grand. Right, so keeping that sense of excitement alive, I think, in whatever are the day to day demands that we have, whether it is from the place we work, place we go to learn, or just taking that little time to explore something new, something different. I think that is what keeps us alive. That's what keeps me alive.
No, if it has worked for you, I'm sure it can be used as a milestone for others, because you have had a successful corporate career while you have also nurtured the artist within you. It sounds very easy, yes, but what is coming out very strongly is whatever field you are in, knowing who you are, knowing what your motivation is, and knowing the why, or finding that why, rather sooner rather than later, is very, very important. And the journey can be very different for different people. Is why we, even in Voice of Artists, one of the basic thoughts was we can't give anybody roadmaps, because every journey is very, very unique.
Right.
We can just show people, hey, this has worked for X, find what will work for you.
Yeah.
And there are some milestones which you can
Yeah.
take. In this journey, because so far what we have talked about is an individual. From an individual who has to develop the individuality as an artist or as an individual, as a person, from there to a collaborative mindset, because so far the way we grow up, the way we evolve, it's a very individualistic mindset
Right.
that gets developed. How do you go from an individualistic mindset to a collaborative mindset?
Interesting, because I think we were looking at going from me to we. It's not me, but it is we, and I think that journey itself, I don't know how we would be more collaborative, but creating spaces, like you said, where people can come together to collaborate, I think, is the most important thing, and helping people find each other to collaborate. Otherwise, we are all isolated in our own, ivory towers of our work or home, or or the phones that we live in.
And the irony, we are just one touch away.
Away, but yeah, but we are still very alone and very lonely. So creating the space like you are doing right now, I think is a very, very important step in creating those collaborative spaces.
And you see a role ecosystem plays or the collaboration plays in strengthening this artistic community also.
Absolutely. I think that is what will also give, a greater impetus to a person to, meet with others or, to create more. The sense of expression and the sense of, togetherness, I think is very important in this whole process.
Could that also translate in changing the bigger picture? And call me crazy if you will, but one person's success or one person's happiness can create a ripple effect and change the collective psyche.
I think to a great extent, yes. And, like I was talking some time back, the effort to build a positive uh, mindset or to build some kind of a positive space for people to come and collaborate, I think that really is very important and definitely would create a ripple effect. Yeah, I think there is a lack of such spaces which are less judgmental, which are less critical, which allow an artist or a group of artists to come together, explore, express. I think that's really very important. Yeah.
It could it also going back to paradox of choice, because there are so many options and so many thought process, direction, personal ethics or values. Does decision making become difficult of who do you or what do you want to align yourself with, while there are less spaces like this where you can collaborate and be less judgmental? But even if there are, would you go towards something which is more, let's say, popular or more available or accessible, and that is why you as an individual find it difficult to decide what's right for you?
I think, see, when there are a number of opportunities, definitely choice becomes difficult, but it also aligns with what is your end goal. If you have clarity on that, you will align to what, to what gives you that, greater joy.
You're saying don't fool yourself, you
Yeah,
own up to your decisions.
yeah, because everything is a choice. I am a great believer in the fact that each one of us is making a choice every minute of our life in what we are doing. If we are spending time doing something, it's a choice we are making.
It's very empowering, at the same time very intimidating, because you're saying you can't regret anything that you have
Yeah,
done.
yeah. You can, and you can blame someone, but that is fooling yourself because it is a choice you're making.
Right.
Yeah. And
This,
it's not easy to live with that understanding.
you're
Yeah.
saying such complex thoughts in such simplistic way.
No, that is the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we need to own up to the choices we make, whatever it is.
How do you face this burden? Because choices can go wrong also, which is not a surprise. How do you keep going? How do you face failure or fear?
I think, there are different ways in which all of us process the consequences of the choices we make. We try to explain it away, we try to find some other.
Justify it with our intellectualism.
Yeah, justify it, or say that somebody else was to blame. But then the fact of owning up and saying that yes, I made the choice to do this, at some point I think it frees you from the burden of trying to find an explanation, and in a way it empowers you if you let it empower you.
If you let it
Yeah,
empower you.
yeah.
Wow. From this, I will switch directions and I want to ask you your favorites, your favorite author, painter, all sorts of artists that you follow and you find inspiration from.
Well, right now I am exploring a lot of, different writers. Singer has been my favorite, and I have read and reread, his short stories. So, short stories as a form is something that I find very, very powerful. Right now I am reading a set of Japanese short stories, and to be able to make meaning, whether it is from a Chekhov or the Japanese short story, I think as a medium it's very powerful. Artists definitely, I find the energy and the creativity of young artists. So when I go to these festivals, I find a lot of young artists and beautiful. They create so beautifully, and then they are out there. They're very vulnerable, and that's an amazing experience. So I think I'm really very fascinated with that entire, the way the young artists are out there. Yeah. So I have, it's been a big journey from admiring those European artists to, seeing the artists around you and seeing the creative process, looking at their struggle, because a lot of them have chosen to be full-time artists, and, it's not easy for them. But, just being there with their journey is amazing.
What would you say to them?
I think it's a tough, very tough road ahead, and a lot of people have taken the easy way out by finding a job that's important for sustenance. This is a difficult and an uncharted field. While there have always been a lot of artists, but every time there is a new artist who comes up, that journey is very, very personal and difficult for that particular artist.
Thank you for acknowledging that, because
Yeah.
it's not just oh, nice creativity, oh, we have freedom,
it's
and
not.
it's not that.
It's not very easy, and that is also one reason why I keep going back to to these festivals, to kind of just interact, to see, to be with those artists, because each one of them is out there putting their self out, and it is about finding their own space. Yeah.
Before we wrap up the conversation, because we've talked about the power of language and what's happening today, to bringing the potential or possibilities through language. And what I mean by that is, when we started thinking about voice of artist, with the limitless potential that it has, the first step we realized is putting it into words, or communicating and expressing about the desire to not just change but just uplift the artistic energy. What role do you see a platform like Voice of Artist playing, which has just started conversations, in taking this journey forward?
I think, I would want to start by acknowledging the immense amount of effort that you're putting into this, the effort and the thought that you're putting into this, because you're trying to create a safe space for artists. You're trying to create a space where there is more positive, collaboration, and you're also creating a space which gives greater meaning. It's not easy. I acknowledge that. It's incredibly hard work, but I think it's very important, right? And I see this growing into, something globally at some time in the future, where you'll be able to bring creators from across the globe onto this platform,
Thank you
where
for
you
saying
can collaborate and create meaning. Yeah. I think I see that kind of a vision.
Thank you for saying that,
Yeah.
Nivedita. It's the hope, it's the courage that we get from people like you to keep going on
Right.
this bold step that we have taken, and that's the hope, because Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, world is one family. Art is the easiest and fastest way to bring that vision into reality,
Right.
which is already happening
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
But we hope that that becomes the future.
I'm sure it will. I can see, all signs of that happening. Yes.
To wrap this beautiful conversation, I want to go back to that young Nivedita. What would that young Nivedita, who was intrigued by the European painters, say to you today?
Maybe to be more courageous, more bold, to
Wow.
take greater risks. That it's okay, it's all right to fail, it's okay to, fall down and to get up once more. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nivedita. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Megha. It was very, very overwhelming, very nice to be, part of this entire thing. And thank you for calling me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.